Hi guys. So once upon a time I did a video talking about how I like to switch protagonist when I am writing. Now what does that mean? Well, for the first few books I had, well, the first two and then the third and fourth separately. The first book I wrote, Fire, I wrote from a woman's perspective, and then the second book, A Spark Before the Fire, coincided with a different character, and it was a guy, and it was his point of view kind of coinciding with hers. And I thought that was kind of neat, and I've done it since in my third and fourth book, and I'll get into more of that in other videos. But for most of my books now, which is mainly the Hernandez series, I kind of write it from the protagonist, which most of those books, except for like two, I think two of them is Chase, and the rest of them is by George Hernandez, his perspective. Now, having said that, usually somewhere in the book, I like to have another character come in. So maybe some random chapter 18 or 25 or whatever, I'll have another character pop in, and it'd be their point of view of what's going on. So it kind of adds dimension to the book. I think that's important. So if you're hearing, say I'm a character and you're hearing me talking for 50 chapters about blah, 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 and then you have one of my friends come in, or a relative or whoever come in one of those chapters, and it kind of switches and we're still telling the same story, but it's from their point of view, it kind of it gives you more than what my point of view. This is my point of view, but if you see theirs, it opens things up. And you're like, oh, well, when, Michelle's talking, she kind of talks like this, but this kind of makes me think there's a little more to it. And maybe I should consider this or this. And that's what I think is important. Just because your protagonist, your main character is telling the story doesn't mean they're always right. You know what I mean? So they could, just because they have an opinion about something, doesn't mean it's the right opinion. Just because they think something's going on doesn't mean it is going on. If they're suspicious of someone, they may not be right about that person, or they might be missing something about that person, because you are hearing how they see the world, and this is how they see the world. If you have another character, this is how you see the world, because it expands that. And it's kind of like real life. I could come to you and say, I'm so mad this happened, and you're hearing my point of view. And usually when I say stuff, people don't believe me. So I think I'm just being dramatic, I think. So they don't take it seriously, but pretend that they did. And they took it as like God's word that this was what happened. Well, maybe it's not what happened. Maybe it's just what I thought happened. Maybe I thought that person was being snide to me and they weren't, or whatever. But if somebody else was in, they said, well, yeah, but I seen it and I don't think that person meant that. It kind of, then you'd be like, oh, okay, and it opens your perspective. And that's good with writing, because I think sometimes we get caught up in the protagonist and we assume, they're the victim or they're right or whatever. And maybe they're not. So I don't know if you ever seen that in books. I find, I kind of am always interested in another character's perspective. And sometimes you get that even if two characters are arguing. And one of them's like saying, you have your main character and they're arguing with someone. And then you kind of hear their point of view too. But I don't know. I think that's important. I think it opens the story up and it makes you see things differently and consider different things and wonder about different things. And maybe it's not quite like that, or maybe that person thinks that because they're insecure, it's just angry or whatever. Maybe it's nothing to do with what they say. Anyway, I know that's pretty vague. I'm not being really clear, But I think you probably have seen situations like that even in your own life with people you know. So characters aren't really all that different. They're just telling you the story. They're like sitting down with a cup of coffee. This is what happened. And it's up to you to kind of see beyond that. And, or maybe you're 100% with that protagonist. That's not a bad thing either. Anyways, guys, what do you think? Let me know.